gentlemen, please take your seats. The program will begin shortly. Let's get everybody who's over at our amazing set of community partners. Come on over, grab a seat. We're going to get started right now. Fill up that last cup of coffee or cold drink, juice. There's all kinds of snacks over there. We're going to get a sugar rush, never hurt anyone. Grab your seats. LA Waterkeeper, Michael, tell everybody to come on over. You won't want to miss a minute of today's program, so grab your seats while you can. Ladies and gentlemen, come on down, as they say in the game shows. That's it, come on down, come on. Still seats right here. Still some coffee, cold drinks, juice, snacks over there. All right, we'll give everyone one more minute to get seated, and then we're going to get started. Welcome to AltaSea. Give yourselves a great big hand for coming out on a Saturday morning. All right, that gets everybody woken up. I'm Terry Tamanet, the CEO here at AltaSea, and I want to recognize our amazing team. Everybody who's part of the AltaSea team, raise your hand so everybody will know who you are. Take a look around. Stand up if you're not standing up. That's it. Great. And obviously lots of blue shirts there because our future is blue. And anybody that's got one of those shirts on or one of these name tags, ask us about AltaSea. We're so glad that you're here, and I do want to recognize again all of our staff, the technicians that are making my voice get out to you, the video. We couldn't do it without the whole crew, so thank you all very much. I think we even have one of our trustees here today, our board chair, Geraldine Matz. Raise your hand. Thank you, Geraldine, for being here. Any of our other trustees here today? I don't want to forget anyone. All right. And I do want to thank all of the groups that are tabling over here today. It looks like about 15 different community organizations. We're so pleased to have their partnership. So after the presentation, please spend spend time over there, please also walk down this way and you'll meet some of our tenants, the amazing blue economy tenants that we have here at AltaSea that are inventing and investing in the future of the blue economy. We really appreciate all of their work. And I also want to recognize the Tonga people on whose unceded territory we're standing today. We have this banner in their honor that was helped to put together by Tina Calderon, our cultural advisor, and we appreciate their collaboration here at AltaSea. I want to just give you a quick overview for those of you who may not know about AltaSea. We're a nonprofit that is in the Port of Los Angeles, and we've taken over this 35-acre campus. The west side of Signal Street is about 240,000 square feet of these historic 100-year-old warehouses. There's some photographs on the building right back there showing how the Navy took this over and used it in World War I as a submarine base. The Navy took it over again in World War II to support the war effort and so forth. And then, of course, with the advent of containerization, ordinary warehouses like this became less useful. And so we were fortunate as a nonprofit to have this dedicated to us as long as we raised the money to renovate it into a modern blue economy education, workforce training, and business development center. And when I say blue economy, what am I talking about? Well, aquaculture, both on land, as you'll see down here with our Kelp Lab and Holdfast, and Seatopia and our other wonderful partners here, and on the ocean, of course, aqua farms. We have Pacific 6, that is, I call them the John Deere of the ocean. They're perfecting the ways that we're actually going to be able to mechanize and plant kelp and mussels and other seafood and fuel and food of the future right here off of our California coast, sustainably and in harmony with nature. We also work very hard in the blue economy on clean renewable energy. So we have partners here like Arcam that are supporting the offshore wind technology sector. And we have things like UCLA and their Sea Change carbon capture program, which if you go out onto the wharf and walk down, you'll see their barge, and there'll be someone there to explain. Dante Simonetti is also right here at one of the tables. He can explain how they are taking carbon out of the ocean, and the byproduct of that is hydrogen. So green, sustainable hydrogen that can then be used to decarbonize much of the diesel operation that you see here in a port, help to clean air and reduce the impacts of climate change. And then we also have wave and tidal energy. You'll see EcoWave down here on the left. We're actually supporting legislation in California now to incentivize more clean, renewable energy from the ocean. And then the third area we focus on in the blue economy is blue technologies, underwater drones and robotics and sensors and ways to understand our planet and plan for the changing ocean and the changing climate future. So we're very excited that, once again, please visit all of our wonderful partners that are here and our community partners that are up and down the berth here today. And you're here at a very exciting time because, as I mentioned, we've had to raise money to renovate the space. We're just starting, so by the way, if you're interested in becoming a partner, you can get one of these cool caps, or you can grab a t-shirt, or support the organization in other ways right there at our store. Yes, that's it, very good. Rosa's showing you the way, doing the Vanna White thing, that's it. So we hope that you'll become a member, a sustaining member, part of Resiliency, maybe even join us for the Blue Hour that's coming up October 14th, our big fundraiser with wonderful artists inspired by the ocean. And we hope that within the next 9 to 12 months, all 180,000 square feet that we're sitting in now will be fully renovated with modern electrical and plumbing and bathrooms and shared facilities for all of our partners that are building the blue economy. We still have a lot more work to do. There's a lot of fundraising ahead to be able to build out the rest of the campus on that side, and then more activities across Signal Street. So one way to stay in touch with all of that is on our website, sign up for our newsletter, and of course keep coming to our open houses. So with that, I'm going to introduce our first guest speaker, but I want to just see a quick show of hands. How many of you have ever been in a hot tub or a jacuzzi? Well, the optimal temperature for jacuzzis, according to the LA Health Department, is 101 to 104 degrees, maximum 104. You may have been reading in the news lately that the ocean water temperature in Florida and other parts of the world has exceeded 101 degrees for the first time in recorded history. July of 2023 will go down as the hottest month in recorded history. And when people in the news talk about climate change and talk about this being the new normal, it's not the new normal. It's going to keep changing and getting worse, because 8 of the hottest years on record were recorded in the last 10 years. So it's only going to get worse unless we harness the blue economy and turn the climate change engine around back in our favor, and we can do it. It's not too late. But we have to realize that 101 degree temperature corals that are designed to live comfortably in water 70 to 80, maybe 90 degrees, it's no different than us. If we had to constantly be exposed to 101 degrees, 104 degree temperatures, we'd be slowly baking ourselves. And we can't keep doing that. So the fact that you're all here today means you know that the ocean is going to be the main solution to these problems. It is the thing that gives us our weather, that gives us our food, our oxygen, 2/3 of the planet being covered by ocean. And that's why we're so excited today to have 2 amazing speakers that are going to talk about how we're preserving that ocean and protecting it for this and future generations. Let me first welcome to the stage Michelle Mareshko. She's the Senior Environmental Scientist for the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. 25 years of experience working in state and federal marine fisheries management right here off the coast of California. She grew up in Pedro and got her hands wet for the first time as a docent at, as a docent at the Cabrillo Marine Aquarium, who is also tabling here today. Hopefully we'll get our microphone back and our power from our TV. There we go. Looks like it's coming back. There we go. We got it. All right. Let's give a great big round of applause for Michelle Mareshko.
All right. Thank you, Terry, for that great introduction. I'm Michelle Mareshko, as Terry stated, and I supervise the pelagic fisheries data project and oversee our fisheries lab operations, which have relocated here. We're a tenant at AltaSea now, which is very exciting. Today, I'm going to give all of you an overview on the Department of Fish and Wildlife's marine region, who we are and what we do, and provide some history on our presence here in the Port of Los Angeles and San Pedro, and what we are doing now at AltaSea here presently as a tenant. I think my clickers. Yeah. There it goes, thank you. Technical difficulties. Okay, so the Department of Fish and Wildlife is one of many departments under the Resource Agency. Our charge at the Department of Fish and Wildlife is managing the marine resources in the state. For the marine region, we focus on those living within state waters primarily. Okay, the bulk of what we have done historically and we continue to do today is focused on fisheries management, both for commercial fisheries, both state and federal, and for sport fishing off of our waters. But as you can see from this illustration, there's actually a lot of different activities going on within the marine environment that impact fish populations as well as invertebrates and plant life. So although that's our focus, really we're not managing fish so much. We are working with our stakeholders and ocean users to use the ocean sustainably and manage our activities so that they have less impact. So the marine region is one of 7 geographic regions that this Department of Fish and Wildlife separates management into. All of the terrestrial regions are geographic, go state waters, which is up to 3 miles and 1 mile around the Channel Islands. But we also engage pretty extensively and co-manage with NOAA Fisheries, managing fisheries and resources out to the EEZ, out 200 miles. Most of our staff here in Marine Region, about 73%, are scientists with marine ecology and fisheries backgrounds. We also have other specialists. We have a lot of analysts that help us manage our fisheries data that comes in from landings, receipts, and logbooks, and other sources of information. And we have an administrative staff that supports our purchasing and other needs that we have. We also coordinate pretty extensively with other branches within Department of Fish and Wildlife. One example would be law enforcement division, our game wardens, and particularly our marine game wardens, as well as licensed and revenue branch that issues commercial fishing permits and sport fishing licenses. One of the important things that we do in addition to traditional fisheries management that complements that management is we're the lead in managing the state's network of marine protected areas. Our network of marine protected areas has been pretty groundbreaking and has served as an example not only throughout the United States but globally. We have 124 managed areas throughout the state. 90% of that is in marine reserves that are completely no-take, and overall it encompasses 16% of state waters. Here locally, we have, I believe, 12 marine protected areas in LA County. There are 2 in Malibu, 2 in Palos Verdes, and we have 8 around Catalina Island. We are also we just produced a 10-year review of our marine protected area network. That is available online to the website up there, wildlife.ca.gov/MPAs for more information. But we have really good news out of that 10-year decadal review, indicating that the goals of marine protected areas are being met. Linda Kilton, who is going to speak next, is going to talk a lot more about the work that our agency and our partners are doing with marine protected areas and the great work that they're doing for us. All right, now I'm going to talk a little bit more and focus in on what the Marine Region has been doing in the port area, our history here, and what we're doing moving forward. So we have a 153-year management history managing marine resources in California. The state legislature established in 1870 the State Board of Fish Commissioners, which transitioned into the Fish and Game Commission, which is still in existence today. At some point, the Fish and Game Commission also designated a Department of Fish and Wildlife around 1914, which later became the Marine Region. Here you see our first state research vessel called the Albacore. It went into service in 1918 right here in San Pedro. The reason why there was such a need for management on the West Coast is because we had a very large and very important sardine fishery, as well as tunas and out of this port that was occurring since the 1800s, and in particular during World War I, served as a very important food source and source of oil for the United States. There's a photo here, you see loaded boats. Those are Lampara boats loaded with sardine. That was about the time that we started had a lab presence in the port. Later, the pursing gear was developed on the East Coast, and it was introduced on the West Coast in California and became very prominent. Pursing allowed fisheries to catch pelagic species, schooling fish, a lot more efficiently, and those fisheries grew even more, presenting a bigger need for studies and for monitoring. And here we have a picture of one of our state fisheries labs with some sardines being sampled and analyzed in 1929. As I mentioned before, we have a long history of having a very productive tuna fishery here in this port too. Some of that came about with the advent of purse seine gear, which is still in use today, and developments that were made right here in the port with the fishing industry to improve purse seine gear with refrigeration available on board and hydraulics in order to haul in a heavier net. This enabled purse seine fishermen to fish for longer periods and go for longer periods offshore to catch tunas. Starkist tuna was started here in this port, and at one point it was the largest cannery in the world. We still have these fisheries occurring within our port and throughout California for sardines, anchovies, and tunas, but most of our canneries have moved overseas. As you can understand, with these large fisheries, there was a need to have a fishery lab and regulatory activity in the port. The first facility was actually a federal lab that was state-funded and staffed by state biologists while we were building a state lab. Here's our state lab in Terminal Island. And so at this facility, we had scientists, we had a library, there were research vessels stationed here, and we were there for a long period of time before moving our lab facilities first to Long Beach and then to Seal Beach eventually. However, we did also have a presence since 1956, I believe, just around the corner from AltaSea at our Fish and Game office, which was primarily for our vessel operations, a research vessel. We've had a continuous presence in this building around the corner since the early 1950s up until the present, and we are currently transitioning, moving our vessel operations to AltaSea. Something interesting about the Fish and Game building is that prior to the 1950s, when we moved in, this was the office where you would report to go out on the Pan Am the Pan Am Clipper, which was basically a flying boat that had overseas destinations, which was pretty cool. So now I'm going to segue into what we're doing at AltaSea moving forward. A lot of what we do, or continue to do at AltaSea in our fisheries lab, is a continuation of the work that we have done in the past to support our local fisheries. We do have samplers going out in the field that are stationed here at AltaSea. They continue to go out and collect fishery information and samples from our local purse seine fishery as we have in the past. We work on Pacific sardine, northern anchovy, Pacific mackerel, market squid, and bluefin tuna. We also have the California Recreational Fisheries Survey staff here. This is sort of a hub for them to come in and collect their gear, turn in their data, and they go out in the field and conduct interviews with recreational anglers all throughout the state, but here locally, LA and Orange County, going to fishing piers, launch ramps, going out on party boats, and they collect data on the catch, the species being caught, sizes of the fish, and the number of trips that anglers make. That information gets used to manage sport fishing. And now I'm going to show you a quick video of one of our environmental scientists, Trump, who works on my program, the Pelagic Fisheries program, going down to Terminal Island and conducting some of our fishery work. Are you not sure how to play the video? Thank you. I think we're missing sound.
and NOAA puts into their stock assessments, and the stock assessments for the next season. So we'll collect the fish, sample the entire load of fish at the processor, and we'll bring it back to the office to do the biological sampling. Pelagic fish would be kind of what we've been working on, so sardines, mackerel, squid, anchovies. They're the forage fish. They're going to be the fish that kind of swim in the open ocean, and they're kind of the main food source for a lot of the bigger fish out there. Basically trying to identify the sex of the fish, so if it's male or female, and you can also tell if the fish has spawned or not. That's kind of why we cut it open.
All right, in addition to our fishery monitoring work, we also have a research vessel and diet operations, which I mentioned earlier, that we are in the process of relocating to AltaSea. We are working with AltaSea to have a docking location and a diet box area located here. Moving over from Route 56, picture here is the Garibaldi, which is our primary research vessel for this area. We have about 15 vessels throughout the state. The Garibaldi is a 45-foot custom Maine lobster boat that was brought over here to California. And it's got an air compressor for dive work, as well as an A-frame to launch various types of gear, such as fishing gear that we use for research, and ROVs. And we conduct research throughout the Southern California Bight on this vessel, all the way from San Diego to Santa Barbara and the Channel Islands. The vessel can accommodate 10 scientists, and if it's an overnight trip, there's bunk space for 6. We will also, be accommodating our dive program, at least partially here. We have, I think, throughout the state, between law enforcement for our agency and scientists and others, about 60 divers for the dive program. We have our own dive training manual, and it's quite an extensive program. Finally, one of the really unique and great benefits of being located here at AltaSea is to have our day-to-day scientific functions here at the lab, and at the same time be able to interact with the public and students of all ages coming in here, where we get a lot of exposure, and we're also able to coordinate with AltaSea with their outreach programs and their education programs to bring in interns and talk to visitors and show them how our lab functions, mentor students on careers, and let them know what kind of jobs are available here with us that they may not have been aware of. So far, we've been here about, I think, 7 or 8 months. We've had the opportunity to participate in many outreach events like today, and we've supported several interns. It's been very positive. I think we're doing great work, being a partner here, and we have some things planned to coordinate with AltaSea in the future to grow our outreach operations and work on some new things. And with that, I will take questions if there are any questions.
I was just wondering, you were talking about the lab, so are you going to have a lab here and over in Long Beach, or is the lab from Long Beach moving?
We moved here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we're here now.
Thank you, Michelle. I was wondering what the status is on the poaching of the sea life at Royal Palms. Has that kind of gotten under control with people coming with buckets and collecting lots and lots of mussels and urchins, etc.?
Yeah, I'm pretty familiar with what you're referring to. There was a period of time, during COVID, where there was a larger than normal group of people going down to our local tide pools, and it was a phenomenon that was happening across the state, actually. We did respond to that go down to the tide pools, talk to people, inform them of the regulations. And we did that over several months, not just here at Royal Palms, but at several locations throughout the state. And I think it did make a difference. But we also had a larger, more impactful presence of law enforcement. And we had, once people knew that they could call CalTIP if they saw something, there were a lot more CalTIP reports coming in, so the law enforcement could respond. And it took some time, but we did get the message out. We were able to do a lot of public education and do some enforcement for situations where education was not enough.
Any more questions?
I've got a question for you. So I've got a question. I think many of us have heard of domoic acid and about the impact that's had on marine life here, especially sea lions. I wonder if you could just comment on the status of that, especially this hot summer, and what causes that.
So I think domoic, the patterns that contribute to when we have a really bad domoic acid bloom are not fully understood, but we know that it's more prevalent when we have warm temperatures in the water, and also, having a lot of nutrients in the water has a big impact on the prevalence. It's caused by a dinoflagellate. It's a microorganism, and what happens is the dinoflagellate concentrates the toxin, and then you have animals such as marine mammals and other animals eat the toxin, and they become sick. And so at this time, we have been having an outbreak. It started in the Santa Barbara area. It appeared to be a pretty serious outbreak that was affecting not just pinnipeds, but dolphins were washing on shore. Marine mammals are really under the jurisdiction of NOAA fisheries, but we work with NOAA fisheries to respond to those events and report them. And then Department of Health gets involved with protecting public safety and doing testing of shellfish and other marine life, so that they can issue advisories if there's a health issue that's going to impact human health. So yeah, thank you for the question.
We have one more question over here.
Yes, I was wondering if there was any plans to try to bring back some of the keystone species that have been lost, like otters and starfish from recent issues. And if so, what are the prerequisites for getting that started?
Well, it's a different process depending on what regulatory authority those animals fall under. For example, otters are the primary jurisdiction is under U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and that's an ESA listed species. But one of the main things today that is going to help with our biological resiliency in general with our environment are the marine protected areas, because they do have interconnectedness throughout the state. It's meant to act as a unit and make our animals, our marine life and the habitats just more resilient to extreme events, illnesses, extreme weather events and things like that. So that is a big part of the solution, in addition to different agencies working together to form recovery plans for some of these species, which are, generally, for most things, there are recovery plans in place that identify what the issues are, what needs to be done, and implementing regulations. So that answers the question.
Okay, so back to domoic acid, you mentioned nutrients, and I'm assuming that's primarily nitrogen and other components of fertilizer that are overused on lawns and golf courses.
Yeah, that can be a contributor.
A contributor or major factor?
Yeah.
Major factor, right?
You know what, I'm not an expert in that particular issue, but
Right.
that's my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Let's give Michelle a great big round of applause. Fish and Wildlife, just an amazing, amazing crew. We're so glad that you're here and that your whole group is here. And we're going to be, as I mentioned, opening our public engagement center at the north end of berth 58 after our renovation is finished. And we know that our CDFW friends are going to be bringing some really exciting displays. We'll have, of course, various displays of some of our other partners going out into the deep sea ocean and various remote places, but exciting to know what's right here on our own coast. And very importantly, your question is, what is it we are doing? You know, when we talked about being in a hot tub, we all might enjoy it for 15 minutes, a half an hour at 100 degrees, 104 degrees, but we wouldn't want to live there. And it's the same thing with an overpolluted ocean that's causing all of these other problems. Well, let's talk now about the positive side of that, because as Michelle mentioned, marine protected areas, or MPAs, can be a real solution to that. We're going to learn much more about that now from Linda Chilton. Linda is the USC Sea Grant Education Programs Manager and co-chair of the LA Marine Protected Areas Collaborative, and the founding partner of the Key to the Sea program, the school curriculum watershed education collaboration. And she's also has a great local pedigree, having served in education programs at the Cabrillo Marine Aquarium. So let's welcome Linda.
Thank you very much, Terry, and thank you, friends at AltaSea. It's wonderful to have an opportunity to be here, and really wonderful to see so many friends out there I haven't seen for a long time, or have seen recently. One of the things about being at USC Sea Grant is we have that opportunity to partner and to really magnify the impacts as we all work together. And I know how very much we value those partnerships. Today I'm here as one of the co-chairs for the LA MPA Collaborative, and excited to share a little bit about the work that's happening within MPA areas. But I don't want to start without giving that respect to the Gabrielino Tongva and the Gabrielino Kitch and the Chumash of this region. As we had a meeting on the decadal management review, it was really evident how important it is that we learn alongside and from the background and history and knowledge of the indigenous peoples who have been here since time immemorial. Thank you. Okay. I just want to point out one of the ocean literacy principles, and these principles were established by scientists and by educators looking at our ocean planet and recognizing that the ocean and humans are inextricably linked and interconnected. We all have an influence on one another and a role, and exist here, coexist together here on this planet. As we look at marine protected areas, these places were really special. They were established in 2012, put into place, and along the entire coast, just as Michelle said, to help protect areas and to have different sets of guidelines or regulations. Today I hope to share a little bit about the status of the MPAs in our area, including some of the research results from the decadal management review, to provide information about who's been involved in doing that monitoring everywhere from members of the community through the scientists who are involved in doing this work. How do we measure that success? Because that was part of establishing marine protected areas, was having set goals and measurements for those goals. What do we still need to learn? What did we find out that we don't know already? And how all of us can get involved. In case any of you aren't there thinking, oh gosh, what can I do? I want to make sure to share that with all of you. So marine protected areas are areas in the coastal ocean set aside for protection. How many of you have been out to one of the marine protected areas? Wonderful. So we have them in Palos Verdes, off of Point Vicente and Abalone Cove, also up in Malibu, off of Point Dume, and over around into Paradise Cove, and then as Michelle said, there are marine protected areas out on Catalina Island, and also down in Orange County. If you've been down to Bolsa Chica, for example, that's a marine protected area. the natural and cultural resources are given greater protection. And again, some areas where you're allowed to harvest, like spearfishing, and other areas where there's no take in those state marine reserves, where you can't take shells or rocks or anything else. You can look in the Fish and Game regulations to know exactly what happens in each of those areas. The whole ecosystem is protected, and this ties very closely to the lessons that we are learning from Indigenous peoples about how important it is to look at systems holistically. There's still regulations about fish size and numbers that you can catch, but within marine protected areas, it's that entire ecosystem, recognizing that those functions are really important as they interact and work together. And initially we had information, some baseline data. We had data on what we knew globally of what was happening. But what's exciting with this decadal management review is we're able to gather more information about what is it showing us after 10 years. 10 years is a short time, but there's still some information that we've been able to glean from the research. There are monitoring updates that are available online on the Department of Fish and Wildlife website. They give you a highlight of what's happening, and I'm going to touch on some of those from the Rocky Intertidal, the kelp forest, and the sandy beach and surf areas. You might wonder, how do we measure impact? We have to set up with establishing what are you going to measure, how are you going to go about measuring. You're going to identify objectives and establish what are indicators. What do we know? How are we going to know that? Then you go out and collect data. And that data is collected on an ongoing basis, but there might be key periods of time where that data is going to be put together to analyze and then to interpret those results. On the Rocky Intertidal, these areas, for those of you who love to go tide pooling, these areas are exposed to the extreme low tides each day, and they're great to be able to go out when there's minus tides, where you can just watch and look, where you can see sponges and tiny Corynectis or small anemones. You can see sea stars, and so we do have some sea stars out here. They just might be a little deeper. In the summer, yes, low tides are in the middle of the night. So you might want to wait till fall or winter when we have some extreme low tides to go out and explore. Marine, the multi-agency Rocky Intertidal Network, has been doing research for over 30 years, or up to 30 years in these areas, all along the coast of California and down into Baja. This multi-agency university program has partners who are out in the field at all hours, all around the year, going back to the same sites and looking at how are populations changing. What's happening as we see our ocean warming, as we see our sea level rising, how are these populations changing? In some sites, they're diving as well to get a little bit deeper and see, are any of those organisms moving deeper rather than staying up in the high intertidal. So they have reference sites that are not in marine protected areas as well as marine protected areas. And there was more species richness and diversity in the Southern California marine protected area sites in their 10-year study. The stability of the community, again, looking at that whole ecosystem, was greater in the South Coast areas on some of the species that they're looking at. And so these are signs of great success, or beginning success, I should say, because it's just that very beginning information. These reports are available online and you can read them in depth. I'm giving you a very, very short snapshot of the tremendous amount of work that was done. Abalone are one of those key species. When someone asked about when are we going to see some of that recovery happening, abalone, there are multiple species along our coast, and one of the unique things about Southern California, the South Coast region, is almost all of those species of abalone have been found in this area. Abalone have great cultural significance, and they're now all protected and have been from harvest since the late 1990s. And as we look at efforts that are happening right now, NOAA, working with California Department of Fish and Wildlife, as well as many partners like the Bay Foundation, Aquarium in the Pacific, Cabrera Marine Aquarium locally, are working to restore populations. Through aquaculture, abalone are being raised and then being returned out into the environment. Because while there are still some abalone out in the environment, they're not close enough to be able to reproduce and restore that population on their own. The white abalone and the black abalone are both species that are on the endangered species list, or the ESA. And they're species that I know as a kid in this area, you could find them. People could go out diving. They were something my sister loved to have for her birthday as a special treat. And now you can have farmed abalone, and they're also a special treat. But they're protected for a good reason, to allow these populations to recover. And so there are 7 species, and 3 are only found in Southern California and Baja. I think I went through most of these. And the white and black are federally endangered. And this overlaps into the kelp forest and rocky reef environments, because abalone depend upon that coralline algae when they're really young and red algae, but then depend upon the kelp forests. And so having healthy kelp forests is really important. In terms of this region, a lot of work is being done by UC Santa Barbara in our region, as well as the Van Tuna Research Group out of Occidental College, and Reef Check. So these survey sites are regularly monitored, and they've added elements that help us understand, again, some of those changes from climate change of sensors that are out in the field collecting ongoing data on ocean acidification, temperature change, and dissolved oxygen. And those all correlate together, and I'm happy to talk more with anyone who wants to know more. This is my only graph, I promise, but I wanted to be able to share with you a little bit about what it's showing for South Coast.
You try and shout for a moment. If you look here at 0, this means there's a decline. This is an increase.
And what's really exciting is to see species that are targeted species, ones that people like to harvest for food. Many of those species are doing well. Non-targeted species, other animals that live in that ecosystem that tend not to be harvested as often, say like opaline. They are caught, many people do keep them, but others will return them, are also doing well. The California sheephead is being able to recover to a degree. We're seeing an increase, and this is in biomass. So looking at where it was and where it is now in the South Coast and in the northern Channel Islands. And other areas of the state, we see more variation. And these are from fish surveys, where divers are going along and surveying the population. Heavily fished species like the California sheephead, kelp bass, and California spiny lobster. All ones that people who like to eat seafood look at and go, oh good, I'm glad to hear. They're doing better with marine protected areas. And so we're seeing an increase. Areas adjacent to those where there's more fishing going on, they're benefiting as marine protected areas continue to produce more and those species go outside of the marine protected areas. We're seeing that MPAs are more resistant to some of those heat effects that have happened in the past. And as we move on to sandy beaches, as you look at this sandy beach slide, you might go, well, that's not my sandy beach, because all of our beaches are so diverse. Now, how many of you can spot birds in that picture? Excellent. Ooh, I can tell there's some birders. How many do you see? They're hiding, they're really good, and that's one of the things that's so important in sandy beaches is they can really blend in well.
Give you some hints. And yes, there's a...
And yes, there's another one up there too that's harder to see from where I am. The rocky shore that's nearby overlaps that sandy beach. These environments are very closely connected with one another and influence one another. It's that kelp rack, the algae that washes up from the kelp forest. There really is a key element of providing the resources that the sandy beach needs to provide the habitat, the food resources for the birds as they come along and for the invertebrates that are in the soil or in the sand. So all of these elements overlap in the area. And that's what was used in looking at the sandy beaches and surf zone, looking at the shorebirds, looking at the fish that are offshore. And there were two methods that were used. One was using BRAV or baited underwater video recording. These are small devices that are put out in the water. Yes, they're baited, so there's fish that's put in them that's kind of hidden, so animals in the ocean, fish can smell them, are attracted to them, but they can't usually get to the food. There's a camera, a video camera that's doing onboard recording. This is much more effective than putting a diver out because the diver can disturb the fish. The BRAV sits there. They come up to it and they were able to record what fish were there. They also use seine nets, and these nets are about chest height, and you walk through the surf and collect the fish. Interestingly enough, the results of these two showed very different fish species. And we think about how fish respond or react. But fish like corbina and surf perch are fish that definitely depend upon that surf zone. In Southern California, we especially depend on this area for those who like to go surf fishing, again, outside of marine protected areas. Some of the factors that aren't tied into some of that research as closely are the effects from the backshore, from the cliffs, the influences from water runoff. And someone mentioned about, are there inputs from fertilizers that are having an effect? That's one of the effects. Another one is upwelling, and that natural process as offshore winds push the surface waters away, it allows space for the deep waters, deep, cold, nutrient waters to come to the surface. And that's producing some of that plankton bloom, but also helps keep our kelp forests and our ecosystems really rich with life. Also off the sandy beach are eelgrass beds. And these are really essential, and they're being restored in areas like Dockweiler Beach by the Bay Foundation. They both provide a buffer, like the kelp does, from large waves. Here they help protect the stability of the beach, but they're really essential habitats also as nurseries for baby fish, and those shore fish that are swimming that we talk about for surf fishing are important. And lastly, well, probably not lastly, but the third benefit is in carbon sequestration. In the kelp forest, Dr. Nichols and Dr. Hitchens recently published about their work in 2020 of how at the top of the kelp forest carbon is sequestered as well. So some of these natural ways of sequestering carbon are really important. And here at AltaSea, the work that's happening in the kelp project is helping look at what types of kelp can be more effective as our waters are warming to help outplant, to help with aquaculture offshore. And the last few slides I want to talk about are ways that we can all get involved. One of them is through NPA Watch. There are boat-based programs, and I encourage you to talk to Michael Quill, who's in the back right here, but he's also over at the Waterkeeper table. And he's out doing surveys in our marine protected areas, looking at what are people doing. These human-based surveys are really helping understand that interface, that interaction that we all have within marine protected areas. There's also shore-based surveys, and those are managed through Heal the Bay in our region, and in Orange County, they're managed through Orange County Coastkeeper. So all along the coast of California, there's marine MPA Watch surveying that's happening, looking at that interface. Again, there's so many complex factors. We have biologists, chemists, people who are looking at the biogeo, including the earth processes, chemistry of this area, and then sociologists looking at how are humans impacting these areas. And so, major human activities, this helps inform managers. Not only are we calling in CalTIP and working with Department of Fish and Wildlife on this, but also helping develop a pattern, or developing the data to show trends, to show what's happening, and to better educate the public about the regulations. So when we talk about regulations, there's non-consumptive activities where we encourage everyone, go visit an MPA. I saw many hands go up, but I also saw some folks that have never been to one. And just like we do with many of the students we work with in programs, especially within Los Angeles, within inner city programs, partnering with folks like Empower Her, and Bridge Builders Foundation, and high schools initially, working with Fauché and other schools, bringing students down to the beach and bringing them into these MPAs, inviting people to go visit and share and recognize these are areas that are all of ours. And together we can enjoy snorkeling and diving and surfing. We can go kayaking and whale watching. There are regulations on consumptive behaviors, so these are limited within MPAs, but in adjacent areas you can also go fishing and look at the MPA guides that let you know where you can consume recreational fishing from shore or boat-based fishing. I mentioned Reef Check before. For those of you who are divers out there and you're thinking, I really love to be involved, I want to do things, go through the training with Reef Check. They are instrumental in helping understand our MPAs, and they do a substantial part of that monitoring that happens in the South Coast region, as well as the entire state, but especially in the South Coast. Recently we had Snapshot Cal Coast, where we ended up going out and exploring the coast. And the data that was pulled up from there includes a tremendous diversity of life. For our marine protected areas, and this is where I'll get stuck probably. Dorothy's going to pull up that site for me. And I just wanted to share with you about the areas for our marine protected areas, the diversity of life. Does anyone have iNaturalist on their phone or use iNaturalist? Awesome. I see some hands out there. I hope more of you get that app on your phone. Or how many of you like to take pictures with your cell phone? Come on, I know you do. Okay, well, taking pictures of marine life is really cool. And being able to share that is highly valuable. On this website, you can see all of the different marine protected areas, and if you keep going down, you might have to go to view more. We can see for Abalone Cove or for Point Vicini, we can see all of the diversity that's been spotted so far. But there's probably other species that you might have noticed out there. And there's a tremendous number of species. Let's see. I think we're too far. I could be wrong. I know we'll make sure that this link's available to all of you, but to see not only how many organisms are out there, the diversity, we're looking at hundreds that have been spotted in our MPAs. And it can be either a challenge to go out and see, and then if you could put most observed species, oops, you can pick any of these, that's okay. Pick one, and so these are some of the species, and then click on most observed species, or actually, yeah, that's fine, any of those, view all. This can be a primer of what to look for If you don't want to add in a photo, I encourage you to, but if you don't want to add one, these are all the species that were at in that one protected area. So bat stars and harbor seals that have been seen, oyster catchers, which are such cool birds, and brown pelicans. These are examples of some of the things that have been observed, and it gives you the number of observations that have been made. So Snapshot Cow Coast happens every year for about 3 weeks in the summer. There's also a Sea Star option to look at in the winter, to again look at populations and to see how they're changing, both their range change, are they moving up the coast where it's colder? Are they moving out deeper? And so how they're responding to changes in climate. And those of you who look at going on the rocks is not for me, also the near shore, that's why you see seaside daisy, that's very much on the land where pink volcano barn is. Thank you, Dorothy. Can I have you go on back to the slideshow, please? Thank you. Whoops. So I encourage you, if you're interested at all in this, there's cards at our table. There's also cards at Department of Fish and Wildlife table that gives you information and also lets you know the species of concern, the ones that are especially desired by researchers. This data is used by a variety of researchers looking at populations. It also is analyzed and submitted to the Ocean Protection Council on an annual basis. So that as they're making management decisions, as they're funding research, this helps support that effort. So I encourage you to also get involved in your Marine Protected Area Collaborative. There's 14 statewide. Each is primarily based by county, though Ventura and Santa Barbara are one collaborative. And these members are organizations and agencies. Department of Fish and Wildlife is a key part of our collaborative meetings. And we're focused on education and outreach and on interpreting what the research tells us and reaching out to communities. In Los Angeles, we're especially focused on reaching into communities by going out into the community and engaging folks who maybe haven't had the opportunity to be at the beach before. We're really fortunate to be in California where everyone has access to the coast. And it really belongs to all of us both to enjoy but to steward and to see how we can give back and take care of our coast. To find out more about the collaboratives, I encourage you to check that out. There's lots of resources also that are available there, including a training that's online, and there's in-person trainings too. Does anyone have any questions?
I'm wondering if you get useful data from satellites that are designed to inform about the state of our environment and help protect it and improve the problems that might be detected via this data.
You have to remember the microphone. Thank you so much for that question. The kelp abundance is it's monitored through Landsat images. And so looking at that image of where the kelp forest is, that boundary helps inform us of how it's changing over time. Really, really important. Harmful algal blooms can be seen from space. And so that information about that big bloom, those warming events, the blobs off the coast, there's so much information that we rely upon from satellites. So thank you for asking that question.
I want to thank both of you for a very informative presentation. And my question is directed towards both of you, and it has to do with climate change and its impacts in the area. I recently got back from an international environmental conference in Cuba, where the LA Maritime Institute presented on ocean plastic pollution and the educational activities that we do on board our tall sailing ships. What impressed me there were the measures that Cuba has taken to deal with climate change. For example, they moved 30,000 people who live near the shore built them brand new houses further inland and gave them to them. They've moved agriculture up the mountains where it's cooler. They're planting mangroves all around the island. And this just seems so different than the minimal acts by governments in the U.S. around climate change. And we know how the EPA looked the other way while thousands of tons of chemicals were dumped right off the coast here. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about any observations that you've made or things that you've read about local impacts of climate change. Thank you.
Great questions, Mark, and thank you for posing those and giving examples of how others are working on this. Some of the things that I can share, and I also will refer folks to our extension specialist who works especially with climate, and Karina Alvarez in our office. Some of the efforts that are happening are definitely meetings, both at the state level and the local level. There is a Los Angeles Regional Climate Adaptation Committee. The California Adaptation Forum is also meeting in the near future, and I'll make sure to get you that information. In terms of DDT, USCC grant has funding and has just allocated some of that funding to these 4 projects, looking at fundamental research on the DDT. So yes, prevent it in the first place. No question about that. Now that we know it's there and these are issues, it is not something that is within the MPAs, it's beyond it, but we know all of the ocean's connected. We know the climate or the currents are definitely influences that the marine life moves around within the ocean. So looking at how much of it is, where it is, and what's it doing today is one of the research projects that's been funded. The DDT metabolites and sediments and the local environment, the assessment of the highly mobile elasmobikes bikes and the impacts on communities that go fishing and through subsistence fishing end up catching those elasmobikes banks. What impact does that have? There hasn't been research on it, and that we've recently funded. And lastly, the disposal and defining biomagnification DDT chemicals. There is tremendous information that we need. We're beginning to understand it and then looking at those next steps. I personally hope that DDT has been a lesson we've all learned from of what to make sure we don't do. What do we do going forward? And having more people watching the environment is one way of helping. Having the voice is another way of helping make that happen.
I guess just a little bit different perspective, because my experience is primarily with fisheries management. And in that realm, the way that climate change is being addressed is primarily more of a planning level, both in the federal arena, the Pacific Fishery Management Council, and also at the Fish and Game Commission and Department of Fish and Wildlife. It's more about considering, looking at our resources and our fish species, commercial and sport, and thinking about, over time, what do we anticipate is going to change with these populations? As they, some species are going to, they're going to dwindle. Some species, their populations may shift north. We may have jurisdictional issues that change as fish populations may move off of California into northern states or offshore. And so where we are with a lot of that is a planning stage and just identifying what the variables might be. And those considerations can be input into models that might include information on life history for some of those species, information about communities and fisheries, and oceanographic information, and examine what the probabilities might look like with all these different inputs and what we expect will happen with climate change, so that we can plan better and get ahead of the game as much as we can. That's just sort of one piece of the puzzle.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and take 2 more questions.
3 years ago, you and I were working together. You remember me? And we were making about $5 an hour, and we were working for a construction company in the county department, and we did nothing but laugh so hard that we were crying. And that's one reason I came to this today, to see you. But I'm so proud of what you've done, and I do have a question about the kelp. I understand that the purple sea urchins are a real problem with the kelp, and I noticed you had a picture of them, and that the predator for the sea urchins is not around, and I wonder how we're doing with that, because it's destroying the kelp forest.
It's wonderful to see you, and that important lesson that I will always remember, and I tell many individuals I work with is know when it's time to go. And that lunch that we had together, so I had to be when I saw you there. The sea urchin is a really important part of the ecosystem. What happens is when there's an imbalance, and our region, there's not the same imbalance right now as there is in the North Coast. And part of it has to do with, as the ocean's getting warmer and those heat blocks. It's exciting to see the sheephead is increasing in numbers because they are one of those predators for urchins, and they're helping to keep that balance. A healthy kelp forest helps keep that balance as well. Again, in terms of restoration, there has been an otter sighted off of Catalina in the last couple of years. So they move about at their own pace, and that's part of why marine mammals aren't the organisms we concentrate on within marine protected areas, is because they go up and down. But it's definitely been monitored in the intertidal, really essential organisms as well. So in our area, we're doing okay. In the north, where there have been urchin barrens, there is some aquaculture work that's happening where they're collecting urchins, farming them, and harvesting those urchins to be able to sell for food, rather than going out and collecting from areas where it's pristine and healthy.
Sorry,
Great question.
we are running out of time.
I'm sorry.
So, perfectly good. I'm so sorry. I know there were many more questions, but I want to urge you all to stay and talk to Linda and Michelle and all of us. We are running out of time because we do have all of our other wonderful partners over here. So let's give Linda and Michelle a great round of applause. Thank you so much. A couple of last quick announcements. Please also give a great big round of applause to our volunteers. And Dorothy Cardenas, who organizes them, great job. Really appreciate it. There is an art project going on down here called Cool Globes. They're looking for some volunteers if you want to stop by. We also want you to know that in addition to our partners here and down the rest of the wharf, on the wharf side is the Ocean Research Barge, where you can operate an underwater drone. We also want to thank our live stream, and hello to the people in Hawaii that just texted me and said you're watching, so we know that it's working. And so please share today's event on social media. Please enjoy all of our tenants here, including some that we didn't mention. Brave Theory is right here, by the way. They never get enough recognition. Give them a round of applause. Yes. And I really appreciate that they're here. They'll tell you what they're doing. Of course, Beneficial State Bank. And last but not least, our store is still open. Please support AltaSea. We can continue to bring you these wonderful programs and help restore our ocean. Because remember, our future is blue. Thank you so much for coming.